I think it's because in a deep level, the West has lost faith in the idea of masculinity. Now, that's no different than the death of God. It's the same thing. And Nietzsche knew what the consequence of that would be. I mean, that's most of what he wrote about, you know, and so you'd say, well, the divine symbol of masculinity has been obliterated. Well, so then what do you expect? What's going to happen? That means masculinity is going to become weak. And especially if the symbol is also denigrated, right? Which it definitely is. So what that means is that the ideal that man could aspire to is denigrated. And, well, then with your ideal in tatters, you're weak. That's definitional. So I think the reason that men have been responding positively to my thinking, let's say, is that I don't buy any of that. I like the masculine spirit. It's necessary, and it's not fundamentally carnage and pillaging. It's not fundamentally rape culture. You know, it's not fundamentally world destroying. And all of those things have been, all of those aspersions have been cast upon it. That's partly the guilt of Western society for technological progress even. And those are reasonable challenges to be set before men. But they're not reasonable accusations to swallow without criticism. And
if it's not that, what is it? What is a masculinity we can aspire to? Or should aspire to?
Well, it's responsibility fundamentally, and it's to put it symbolically is that your responsibility is to incarnate the spirit of the Logos. That's your responsibility. That's your role in life. And that is independent to some degree in whether or not you accept the idea of a transcendent and eternal reality. Now, I'm not making a case for that or against that. Those things are beyond human understanding. But we know what happens if people act poorly, if men act badly. We know what happens. We know that the world turns into something that's so close to hell that the difference is trivial. We know that. That's the story of the 20th century. So we should learn that lesson. And what that lesson is pick up the world on your shoulders and walk forward. Pick up the world with all of its trouble, with all of its suffering, with all of its evil, and move forward with it. And in bearing that burden, learn that you're the sort of creature that can bear that burden and therefore deserving of respect. That's identification with the Logos. And I've never encountered an idea that's better than that, because it's so not naive. It's the opposite of naive. It's like there's terrible evil and there's terrible suffering. It's bottomless. But the human spirit is capable of voluntarily taking that on as a challenge. Well, it's worth a try.
What do you think the components are for true knowledge and understanding?
Well, I think the motivation, one of the best motivations, is existential terror. You know, I mean, I don't remember where this is in the Old Testament, but the line is, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And that's definitely psychologically true, but we could strip it, say, of its transcendent implications and say, well, if, for me anyways, I wasn't motivated to be serious until I knew what I was capable of in the most negative way. Because you don't take yourself seriously until you know that you are an evil monster. And you don't take that seriously until you know what that means. And so, but once you know what that means, especially if you find that out consciously, say, then you're in a position to start taking yourself seriously enough so that you might be willing to learn what you need to learn to become wise. You have to see yourself as an Auschwitz camp guard, and you have to see yourself enjoying it. And that can't just be an exercise in intellectual simulation, precisely. It has to be a dramatic experience. You have to feel that in your bones. And then you have to decide, and you have to give the devil his due. There's something very attractive about predatory power. And you might even say that it's preferable to pathetic weakness. Now, I'm not saying that, but you could make a case that it is. Because you could say that the person who's pathetically weak would like to be a predatory tyrant, but just doesn't have the ability. And that's a Nietzschean criticism of standard morality, I would say. But then, is there something higher than predatory power? Well, yes. I mean, part of Christ's encounter with Satan in the desert is precisely that realization, because he's offered the kingdom of the world. And that means he's offered the option of tyrannical power. And his response to that is, there's something better. And that's wisdom. There is something better. And there's no reason not to go for what is the best. What else? You don't have anything better to do than that by definition, right? So why not work for the betterment of being and abandon your resentment and your hatred of humanity and your self-contempt and take on the responsibility of the horrors and catastrophes of human existence, and do what you can to, well, at least not make it worse, but maybe to make it better. You know you can. You know you can make it worse and better. You just don't know how much. Find out. It might be way more than you think. I'm sure that's the case. So there isn't any more interesting adventure than that. You know, find out how much good you can do in the world. And not in this moralistic, thou shalt not way, but in a forthright, noble, courageous, eyes wide open, articulate, embodied manner. And then God only knows where we could get. So
let's see.
Let's find out. That would be good. It's certainly better than the alternative.